All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm filling in for Dave Foy. This week's episode is We Are, so Women Educating in Automotive Retention and Excellence. It's powered by OEM Interactive. And I have Mika and Sharon with me. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you.
And we have some sponsors to thank too, and we'll get into all of that with IntelliCheck. So do you know the pain points that cause customers to leave? Would you like to know if your advisors are offering to book appointments, quoting prices, and interacting with your customers as you expect? With IntelliCheck, you can know and have it plain and to fix it all. I think I messed up the last part, but it works. IntelliCheck is a great company, and they're awesome people over there. So today we're going to talk about there's different segments, and the first segment is breaking barriers and building careers. And really the overview of that is just focusing on understanding how you arrived in automotive, because I think we all have some great stories how we got here, and highlighting the importance of mentorship and networking, creating supportive environments, which is huge in just growing our careers. So Mika, I guess, and then let's think another, this segment is brought to you by Automotive Warranty Network. Thank you guys over there. So first question I have for you guys is, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced as women in the automotive industry, and how have you overcome them? And we can start with Mika.
Yeah. I have to preface that I grew up in Germany and I come from the OEM side, so that's a little bit different. But I think, and that's what I've learned since I moved to the US and work more with people in tech and also work more with women in dealerships and vendors. Those challenges have been there since forever and they are still there. So I would say what really made me feel bad about myself as I worked in the car industry as a junior person was being talked over, not being taken seriously, continuously underestimated, shushed. Even I'm a communications person. So even when I was not with engineers, older communication guys would still shush or just talk over So you felt very visible on the one hand, as there weren't many women, and invisible at the same time because you weren't really seen. I think that was the big thing I saw, and that most women I talk to see or experience.
And how do we overcome, or how have you overcome some of those? I know obviously it's changed over the years, but we're still going through that. So how do you work to overcome that?
I think there is a combination of different factors. On the one hand, as you get older, that's the big advantage of getting older, is that you just care less and less what people think of you. So that's the good news for everybody who's very young still. So you build the resilience. It's unfortunate that you have to, but you will build it if you are passionate about staying in that field. If not, but if you're passionate about the field, you will build the resilience, and you can learn the mindset to overcome it better. That's another point. You can be involved in organizations that actually change the structure of the industry, as all of us are here. That's the whole point of these Women in Automotive events and organizations. You can build a network, a support network. We will talk about that later, I think. So there are many things, and in the end, there's not the one way to do it, but it's a combination, I would say, of many, many baby steps.
Lots of baby steps. That's how we have to overcome some of these things. And Sharon, in your experience, what have been some of your big challenges, and how have you overcome them?
Well, first of all, I can't imagine anyone shushing Mika, but I guess it happened at some point. But when I think about the experiences that I've had or have had to overcome, I'm not sure they're unique to the automotive industry. I think they're just kind of unique to women. And the one that kind of comes to mind for me most often is just situations where kind of our softness or maybe our perceived timidness would be a detriment. So maybe an opportunity to go negotiate a pretty difficult or sticky deal or opportunity. Maybe a situation where you needed to downsize or even close a business or start up a business, right? The idea that we might not be tough enough in order to handle those types of situations, I think provides an opportunity for people to think that a man might be able to do it better. And, you know, if I had to summarize how you overcome that, you just power through. You know, you look people in the eye and you say, oh, no, I can handle that. And then you go show them that you can.
Yeah. So you basically don't let them tell you you can't do something. You you tell them you can. So
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah. And I do feel like a lot of us women have that drive. You tell most women they can't do something, we're going to do it 10 times faster and better. You tell me I can't do that. Yes, I can.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. That's why we're amazing. So, what about mentorship? I know that's been huge in my career, is having those people to fall back on and really have them tell me I can do stuff too. Because sometimes you really question yourself too when you're in that mode of like someone's telling you can't do something. You also start questioning, and so mentorship is huge. So what advice would you guys give on just how do you find a mentor? Does it just magically happen, or I don't know? What's your experience? We can start with Mika.
I would love to give a shout out to my mentee, who is a young woman from the global south. And she decided when she was very young that she wanted to work in the German car industry and made it happen for herself. She is there now, and is going to college and working for OEMs. And she met me in a workshop I did with her department. And afterwards, she reached out, said, can we hop on a call? And she asked me if I would be willing to mentor her. And just for the courage to do that. Of course, I said yes. I mean, of course, I'm so impressed by everything she does, and I love to mentor her, but she did this thing. And if I had said no, it wouldn't have been personal. It would have been a matter of I don't have the capacity, whatever, or I don't feel we are a good match. But just asking, that is really how you make those things happen. She got a no from someone else, but she did it. And I think that is that story. And she's 21 now, I think. So she did that when she was 19 or 20. That was already when she had moved herself halfway across the world. So that courage, I think, pays off. And when people say no, it's not about you. So please ask, and then be specific. That's the other thing. If someone says, oh, can you introduce me to, and then says something very general, I'm like, I know 3,000 people in, I don't know, in the industry. What do you need?
So know what you need.
Yeah. And ask specifically. That makes it easier. It's not rude to ask for specific advice or introductions. It actually makes it easier for the other person.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's great advice. What about you, Sharon?
Well, first of all, I would also do a shout out to your mentee, because if you don't ask, you don't get. So good for her to come forward a second time after she was kind of pushed away the first time. But I absolutely believe mentors are critical in your career for a number of reasons. And I think most people think of it as advancement, but I would say I think mentors are critical for your mental health, your professional health, the ability to vent when you just want someone to listen and not actually maybe even offer advice. Most of my mentors have been men. just because of shared experiences, working on a project together or being in a business together. And then over time, you continue that relationship when that project or business ends and you want to ask advice or experience. But I do think having a female mentor for young women is also critical, because I think there are things around gender bias or other female specific issues in the workplace that it's just easier to go to a female mentor. So I would recommend both. And I would also recommend having mentors within your industry as well as outside of your industry. I think we can breathe our own exhaust. I guess that's a bit of a pun in this industry that we're in. But I think it's oftentimes really important to get a fresh perspective and new ideas from somebody who's not as close to the situation as maybe your other mentors are.
Oh, yeah. I love that advice, having in the industry, outside the industry. And then what I'm gathering too is just being specific of what you're looking for and asking for the help, because you're not going to get the help without asking.
That's right.
The biggest thing. And then what about like strategies for an organization with to implement some supportive and environments for women? Do you guys have any things that you're doing with your organizations that others could implement? Sure.
As far as a mentor program, or
yeah, just any strategies to create more of like that supportive, inclusive environment for your employees.
Yeah, so as far as a mentor program goes, Dominion doesn't have a formal one, but we have a lot of informal mentor and mentee situations going on, which I love to see and hear about. But we do offer some opportunities for more kind of inclusion and diversity in a training format, not only for our up and coming leaders, and I actually facilitate that training environment for them, but also tools that they have outside of these four walls. Things on LinkedIn Learning. There's a great podcast called The Diversity Gap, Inclusion Works, are all available for women or men who just want to kind of get a better basis for how diversity benefits an organization, and having different opinions and thoughts being brought into a discussion creates a more collaborative and ultimately more innovative solution.
Yeah, I like that, because having the different views and perspectives together to collaborate, I think it creates the environment to collaborate rather than, my view is the right view and I'm going to win and everyone needs to agree with me. I think it's like where we need to shift. We're all trying to come to one solution that works for everyone. Whatever problem we're working through. But what about you, Mika? Did you want to add to that? Any strategies for organizations?
Just briefly, I mean, I have a small team and it's all women, which is deliberate. But so I am very involved in a couple of the industry organizations. So for the smaller organizations, that is a very easy way to do something positive for their women. So for the OEM and tier one side, it's probably Women Automotive Network. For dealers and vendors, it's more women in automotive. There is CADIA for the diversity and inclusion aspect. There's AWAF. So there are a lot of organizations. And if you have a smaller company where it's hard to put in anything formal, those are all organizations that are extremely happy to support the women or other underrepresented groups at your company.
Those are great places, because I know me coming into the industry, I wasn't aware of all those. So getting active on LinkedIn, you start to build those networks and you can see all the different ways you can connect with people in the industry. So
yeah, Kaylee, if I can just add on to what Mika just said, I belong to those organizations as well, and they're fantastic. And they do a lot online.
which is good. And then they also have in-person conferences or events. I would just encourage people to do both, because you'll connect to people on LinkedIn by being in those organizations, but physically going to one of those events is where the real networking and mentoring starts, right? Over a glass of wine, with business cards being exchanged, and more intimate and in-person conversations happening. That you just can't replicate that in an online environment. And so I know there are many kind of local chapters that are being started of those organizations or other similar organizations locally. And I would just encourage people to look local. If you don't want to have to get on a plane and go to a conference across the country, or maybe in Micah's case, across the globe, to look locally so that you can have that in-person opportunity more easily as well.
Yeah, there's nothing like that real in-person connection. And going back to LinkedIn, I think it's kind of fast forwarded those awkward kind of because when you're connected with people on LinkedIn, you feel like you kind of know them. So then when you meet them in person, you're like, oh, I kind of already know you. Whereas before we didn't really have that. We're like, so, who are you? You don't kind of fast forwards that pre getting to know you stage, I think, in person, which is awesome.
I would absolutely encourage everybody, introvert, extrovert, junior, senior, whatever, to really, really use LinkedIn, because we are all there to make connections. So it's not awkward to reach out. That's the first thing. And it's not that people put you on a blacklist when they don't want to connect. Right? So there's no risk. It's really lowest barrier to start building your connections. There are, in addition to those larger groups I just named, there are tons of little groups. There are local, as Sharon said, there are a lot of local chapters. So LinkedIn really is such a huge doorway. And people are so helpful. Even if you're relatively new to the industry and say, I don't even know if I want to go this way or that. And you reach out to 2-3 people on LinkedIn and say, hey, you do a thing that really interests me. Could I pick your brain for 10-15 minutes? Most people will say yes, especially if you keep it to that short time frame, because people who are passionate about what they do love to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And they love to help. Most people love to help.
Yes. And then the ones that don't want to help, you just move on, because that's probably the person you don't want to connect with. But going back to what I've gathered from you, what you said, and it's what you both have said, is being intentional, like knowing why you want to connect with some people, and so that you're to the point and you know what you want. I think that fast forwards and is helpful with that. Okay. So last question I have was about just building. Well, we kind of already talked about building strong networks, but this question's more in line with career growth, how building that network to grow your career. Do you guys have any advice for women just wanting to grow their career, and how do you do that with a network?
So I would say when I was growing my career, I was, obviously in automotive, but I, maybe wanted to get into product management or into sales or marketing or whatever along the course of the way. I would seek out networks specific to the competency that I wanted to pursue, right? You need people that you're reading what they're posting, what they're writing, how they're handling themselves online in those different competencies, so that you can learn from it, maybe mirror it in order to kind of fit into that mold or that role that you're looking to pursue. It could be a competency, I guess, or it could be a title, right? You want to move up in the existing competency, but get to a different title. So my recommendation is look to network with people that have that title or are in that competency that you wish to pursue.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what about you?
Of course, seconding everything Sharon said, of course, and I think it ties in with the way we talked about mentoring and networking before. One thing I recommend to women in this particular topic is do not solely focus on learning skills, because that is something most of us have, that good girl behavior. And the moment someone says, oh, to do X, you need to study Y. And we are like, yes, that's my comfort zone. Give me a book, give me a LinkedIn learning course. And of course, lifelong learning is a good thing, but we think we can only act after we have learned the new thing. And that is not true. As Sharon said, make the contacts with people who are already in the field right away and say, can I volunteer here? I mean, we're not talking about lawyers who need a bar exam to practice. Right? So if there is like a legal requirement, of course you need that first. But in many, many areas, you can volunteer, you can shadow, you can do so many things instead of just like staying behind your screen or your book first and studying for your test. This is real life. The test matters, or the certification matters, but it will not speak for itself. It's not school. The straight A will not get you anywhere. You have to do that. I think that is especially something that's a step harder for women, because many of us have 20 years of being applauded for the straight A's, or like putting in the academic work, the school work. So it's harder to, make yourself go beyond that, but it's crucial.
Yeah. So you're saying, put in the work and get that experience, as well as, further than the education. Because there's a difference with physically doing things than learning to do things I think that's what you're saying. Okay, so now it's time for the quote of the week, and that's sponsored by Parts Edge. Thank you, Parts Edge. So the quote of the week is, women are very good at balancing responsibilities, and we need that kind of skill set, especially in leadership positions. I would 100% agree with that. And again, that's brought to you by Parts Edge. All right, so the next segment is sponsored by Petra. Thank you, Petra. Great group over there. I love all these sponsors. I know a lot of these people, and they're great people. So the next segment is about leadership and innovation. So we want to talk about advancing roles in automotive industry and exploring leaders and driving change, impacting technology advancements, and just the significance of fostering culture and innovation. I think that's a big deal in what we're dealing with as our industry right now. So how can women leverage leadership skills to drive change and innovation within their organizations? What advice would you guys give for that? And we can start with Mika. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a topic I'm very, very passionate about, because I just talked about the comfort zone, and we are dealing with an industry that is completely out of its comfort zone. Every part of it, right? With what we're seeing in the entire industry right now. And I feel that women are particularly well suited to really dealing with that, because as the quote said, women are so used to juggling a lot of responsibilities, tasks. They are used to surprises, discomfort, all these things. And they usually, on average, that's average, bring more empathy into their leadership style. And when people are in a field that's so uncomfortable, because there are so many issues and there are so many changes, the transition, and innovation and all these things, people get uncomfortable. And when you are a leader who brings empathy to the table, you can help people to say, okay, this is uncomfortable, get it. It's a little scary, but I see you. I get that you are scared. We're doing this together. I'm here for you too. So I think that is where women really have kind of a competitive edge over the old type of leadership we still see in many areas of the industry.
Oh yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's 100%. We can balance a lot of things, and the empathy, like that's a big deal. So, and Sharon, what about you? Just what skills or how can we leverage and drive change in the industry?
Well, I think the word you used earlier was innovation, right? And if I think about some of the most innovative things that have kind of come across my path during my career, they've always come from a whole lot of different people's voices who have different experiences coming together and collaborating and generating an idea, brainstorming, if you will. And so I think from a leadership skill perspective, Mika's right. We have a lot more empathy, I think, as a gender maybe than the other gender. But what I sometimes fear for women, and I'm guilty of it myself, is that they kind of want to get to end of job as well. So you have to be careful from a leadership skill perspective to not stifle all the ideas that are coming at you, and just let it simmer for a while and not be so ready to check the box and move off of that and get to the next thing that needs to be done, because some of the best innovations in our industry are coming from just a lot of collaboration and a lot of voices with different experiences coming in the room.
When you said that we just like to check things off, it totally resonates with me, because I'm like, okay, on to the next thing. I got that done.
I've got my checklist right here. Yep, I know.
I have multiple but I wouldn't survive without it. But I love how you reminded everyone, just like let things kind of simmer, especially when it's ideas and you're trying to resolve things or get it takes time. And then also I think a big thing too that comes to mind was you try things, you work together to try things, and then you kind of have to shift because you're like, okay, that's not working. We kind of have to adapt that or change that, because as you're doing it, things change.
Right.
So
yeah. I just heard the greatest acronym I think I've ever heard earlier today. The hippo in the room. We're used to hearing the elephant in the room, but the hippo in the room stands for the highest paid person's opinion in the room. And I think we're, as leaders, we tend to be guilty of that, right? Everybody just kind of looks at you and waits for your opinion to come. And again, just back to innovation, just don't offer the opinion. Let it come from the team that you're asking to collaborate and innovate. But I loved that acronym.
I love that. And I think as leaders, especially in your guys' roles, you kind of have you feel like you have this obligation to make the decision, where it's a lot of pressure, and you're almost like, you got to take others, other input, and not fully rely on you making that decision. I think that's what you're saying, is like, get everyone together to help make that decision rather than solely on you.
Right. Just keep your mouth shut for a little while.
Those are the best ideas, when you just keep your mouth shut. So you can learn from everyone. I love that. Hippo, that's a good one. I wrote it down.
Okay.
So how does fostering a culture, wait, am I on the right section? Yes, I'm on the right section. How does fostering a culture of innovation help promote gender diversity in the workplace? And we've kind of already talked about this, but just kind of a different perspective of, how can culture and innovate?
I think it really builds on what we already said. And the hippo, I wrote that down too. We know that our first idea is never the most creative one, which mostly is good, because I don't want to have a new creative idea for doing everyday tasks. Mm-hmm. But in innovation, I need that new idea. And that's, I think, where the really very intentional bringing more voices, different experiences to the table is so important. Because what I'm seeing right now, just like coaching and consulting in this sphere, is that people tend to be proud for checking diversity boxes, like we have X% women here, which is good, of course. But I think what is missing sometimes is we need diversity of thought. And so if you have a bunch of, I don't know, white women from middle class women with academic degrees in the room, again, you probably have a very homogeneous group. It's maybe it's in the industry, it's still not the majority culture. So it offers a new voice. But then there are many other voices that are still not being heard, even if the women's share might be met. So diversity of thought and experience is something we can intentionally foster and have to foster for innovation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said it's not the majority. It's so I think 80% of automotive purchases are either made or influenced by women in our industry. 40% of the roles, jobs, whatever you want to call them, in our industry are filled by women, but only 20% in leadership roles. And, you know, most of those roles that are filled by women are HR, accounting, finance. You know, you don't see a lot of women technicians in the shop, more today than used to be. But, you know, we have some work to do there to be able to accurately reflect the consumer gender profile that are buying and having vehicles serviced in our industry. I think fostering a culture of innovation ensures within a company that everyone has permission to come to the table with their ideas. If not, if that culture doesn't exist, then women can feel silenced as it relates to bringing their ideas to the table. And as I just articulated with those statistics, it's really, really important for us to hear the perspectives of women in our industry, because that's the reflection of the consumer.
Yeah, that and when I hearing you guys talk about this, there's basically what comes out of it is, you know, there's a difference between saying something and having that culture. Is
Right.
basically what we're talking about, and creating those actions. And you know, you could say you have that type of environment, but then all the women feel silenced. You know, there's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. Okay. Next question. What role does technology play in creating new opportunities in women, for women in the automotive industry? Because technology, we're advancing rapidly. So I kind of feel we've already covered some of it, but we can go ahead and talk about the technology part of it. And we can start with Sharon, maybe.
Sure. Actually, I recently spoke at a local college here to a women's group trying to promote the automotive industry. And, you know, I asked the question up front, what do you think of when you think of the automotive industry? And, you know, I called on somebody and they said, grease under the fingernails. You know, that is a perspective, obviously, but boy, has it changed. If you think about just the amount of technology in vehicles today, and the fact that EVs don't have grease or as much maybe as the combustion engine cars did and do today. We're really transitioning our industry across all aspects, from manufacturing to retail to all of the vendors like myself that support those other two components of the industry with technology and services, so that they optimize their consumer experience and their team member experience. So I just think that the idea that it once had this perspective of being kind of blue collar and, like I said, grease under the fingernails, to where we are today. We need more communication to young people coming out of school, what trade schools or secondary education, to really help them understand where the opportunities exist for them in this industry, because it is almost all around technology.
It really is. I think, yeah, it's absolutely all around technology. And you're right. I mean, going to school, at high school, we had classes where it was auto body, and it was like, okay, go work at a dealership because you're gonna get grease under your fingers, and that's that industry.
Mhm.
But there's so much more than that. It's technology, marketing, sales. There's just, it's such a magical thing, and you could
Mhm.
try it all.
Mhm. That's right.
And so, Mika, what about you?
I would also add that we've seen in the pandemic with many people working from home that it can be an additional stress on women, but it can also offer a lot of opportunity by seeing how many jobs can be done from home. And so this is something, it comes with upsides and downsides, but it's certainly a thing that you can make work for you in a lot of fields in automotive. And also like the OEMs that go to an agency model for EVs or pre-owned cars, that can benefit people who need a little more flexibility in there. So that's usually women. Women need the flexibility. So that, again, it comes with upsides and downsides, certainly. But those, when you really look for your opportunities, I think these new ways of working, that they can really pay off for women. They can make it work for them.
When you say new ways of working, what do you mean exactly?
Just the hybrid ways, right? So doing having remote work opportunities, being able to do a lot of meetings online, those things, because there's huge acceptance now for this type of meeting. Right? It's more, and that gives you more flexibility because also, we are all now used to dogs barking, kids crying, whatever. All these things have been normalized. I mean, in a very difficult time period, certainly, but they are a silver lining. So for women who really had a hard time balancing out of the home full time or more than 40-hour work weeks, there might be opportunities also in that, because that is definitely advancing in all parts of the industry, even if right now everybody's going back to work. But I think overall it has been shown that a lot more stuff can be more flexible.
Yeah, I think that's been huge for the industry, especially for women. I just speak on my own personal experience because I have two young children, and it was very important to me to have a career still, and to not to be able to be home with them and be there, but also still have me in my career, because I worked very hard to have it, and I didn't want to let it go just because I had kids. So yeah, it's something that's been so amazing to see that kind of normalized, like you're saying. Sharon, did you already speak about this, or did you have anything to add? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, I started this
Yes,
one.
you started. Okay. Just the last question I have for you guys is just advocating, how we can advocate for women inclusive and forward thinking policies in the companies. And I think I heard you guys talk about going, to schools and advocating about how awesome the industry is and the opportunities. Is there any other things that we're doing that we can advocate for?
Yeah, I think when I think of policies within companies, right, that's different than advocating for the industry. That's really advocating for women. And as much as we want to be treated the same, we are different. And, to your point earlier, Kaylee, we're the only ones that can carry, a child for 9 months. Not the only ones that can care for it afterwards, but certainly the first 9 months are on our shoulders. And there's a lot of other unique health-related items that are also unique to women that companies have typically treated as taboo conversations, and are now starting to open up and really put unique healthcare plans or policies in place.
I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago where I heard that General Motors is now offering healthcare benefits for women who are going through in vitro. So that's amazing. And that's something that I think was just kind of like, deal with it, right? Your body's going through all of this prep stuff in order for you to hopefully be able to have a child after you've struggled, and all the psychological implications of that. And you're just supposed to show up to work every day and act normal. So I think that's an amazing new policy. At Dominion, we have healthcare policies associated with women's health, things that happen during pregnancy, and then, of course, obviously also later in life. So I love the idea that some of the topics that have been taboo and not talked about openly are now starting to be openly discussed, with policies applied to them as well, which is great.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, because just what you go through if you're struggling to have a child, and then when you are pregnant, all the health part, it's like almost like you're expected to just have the kid, and then you're like, okay, back at it. You're normal. But I read something, it takes 2 years for a woman's hormones to balance out and actually feel like herself again after having a child.
I don't know. My son's 26, and I'd say I'm still struggling, but anyway.
Don't tell me that. Gosh. Mika, what about you with policies and things? Gosh, I think that's so amazing that Dominion's doing that. Any other experiences?
I'll give you a tiny example, which I heard recently from someone at an OEM, where they don't have tampons in the bathrooms on the shop floor. Now that means, as I'm in a uniform, I cannot carry my hygiene products. So if I'm a woman on the shop floor, I need to go back to my stuff in my break time, get a tampon, go to the bathroom, and come back to work, which in big factory halls can be an extra 10 minutes. And there was a discussion about it, and men said, oh yeah, but what about when people start to take those tampons home? And I'm like, do they have an idea how cheap tampons are? That's a very basic thing. So I like to give that example because it makes a lot of men very uncomfortable. And it's such a little thing that the cleaning crew also brings, like, restocks tampons in bathrooms, like in most restaurants, in hotel, whatever. So men don't know that. But that's one thing. Say these things. And for men, listen. If a woman tells you these things, it's probably not because she wants to steal $2 worth of tampons. It's not. And then also, I think for female leaders, make sure that you really sponsor your ERGs if you are in a bigger organization, or the women's group, the networks, the diversity networks. And they need budget. They need budget to bring in their speakers. They need budget to really budget they control, so that not every time they want to do something for their members, they need to go begging to a director. So budget money talks, right? Give those groups budget
for those things, and those things I feel like make you feel like you're cared for, like you're important. I've thought about these little things for you that will make you feel comfortable. And yeah, I love that. I think now it's time for the stat of the week, which is sponsored by Big Stops Jobs, powered by OEM Interactive. 57% of employees have left a job because of their manager's behavior and leadership style. And the source is Better Works. That's a huge stat. Okay, so we're talking about the IntelliCheck is sponsoring this last segment. Know your competition. Thank you, IntelliCheck. So this last segment, we're going to focus on the future of women in automotive and cover predictions for the industry, which that's always fun, and the evolving roles of women, what steps are needed to ensure progressive and gender equality and inclusion. So first question I want to cover is, what do you envision the future of women in the automotive for the next decade? That's a big question, Dave. Jeez. I didn't write these questions. All right. Mika, you go first.
I am generally an optimist. So I mean, my vision is to have 51% of power positions in female hands, just reflecting the population, and preferably while I'm still lucid. I'm over 50, so we'll have to rush that a little. I think I have another 50 years, but I think if we get to the 30%, that would be a really, really good result. 30% of decision-making positions. That would already be a huge result. And I am positive. I mean, we're seeing a lot of backlash in many areas right now, but I think overall 10 years is a long time. We always underestimate. What is that saying? We overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10. And I mean, for me personally, that makes sense. I think that especially with those new technologies where you don't have to have grease under your fingernails, you can have the pretty fingernails and be a technician or an engineer. I think we will see a much larger share of women and marginalized groups in all areas of automotive, and it will benefit the industry because it reflects the customers better.
It does, yeah. And I think just having conversations like these, having all those groups, it has to increase. By talking about it, that's how you improve. And Sharon, what about you? How do you envision the future of women in automotive?
Yeah, so I'm not going to predict any percentages, but like you just said, talking about it helps. And I guess my vision is that we're not talking about it anymore, right? That it has equaled out to Mika's point, that it reflects the percentage of the population, or more reflective of other industries, maybe healthcare as an example. And we just don't have to have the conversation anymore. And that I do think we can get there in a decade. Absolutely.
Yeah, we definitely can. And what about how can training programs better prepare women for careers in automotive? And we'll start with Sharon. And yeah.
So like I said, I mean, I'm just advocating for women here locally in the local schools and colleges. A little bit of an extension of a STEM, effort as well. But I think just education, that it's not grease under the fingernails, is a good start. And the amount of technology is also quite interesting in the industry, is also quite interesting to women. But in a software business like mine, our training is not what I would consider to be male focused. It's just, training. And, as many women receive it as men, and for their different roles. And it's both online as well as in person, leader led as well as computer based. So I think we're probably trying to give everybody the type of curriculum that they need in the format that they excel in.
I think that's really important. It's not a one size, not everyone learns the same. So having the different ways that people learn, and not making it mandatory of like, this is the way you have to learn it. Good luck.
That's right.
So I like that. And Mika, what about you? Oh, wait, I already asked you. Wait, no, I didn't.
Nope, I have 2 points. I have 2 points. One is you really need to check how you train, coming from a system that has been set up for men. So a lot of just the tools and the safety gear and everything is too large. Women's hands are smaller. So scanners and those things, there's a lot of there's a lot of issues where it's just very uncomfortable for women, either because the gear is not, but because the gear is not size appropriate or something. So
That makes
there
sense,
are a
yeah.
lot of actual, we see that in other industries too. It's like the police has police units have that problem with the vests, right? That they don't protect women as much because they are usually on the larger side. So that is something that has to be changed already in training, because if I'm uncomfortable trying to handle stuff that could as well be a little smaller and fit my hands, then I might not just continue, right? So those things do make a huge difference. That's on the more technical and tool side. And the other thing is, I think we also need to communicate earlier and more widely that this is an industry that also offers amazing opportunities for non-STEM people. I'm a communication person. I didn't even, if I hadn't grown up in southern Germany with this huge OEM and tier one industry, I wouldn't even have thought of doing anything in that industry, because I knew I wouldn't be an engineer. So I think that is also something that we forget. Of course, we want to raise the number of women in engineering and in software development and all these things. But also, there are a lot of very attractive opportunities for international careers in sales, in marketing, in communication, and in all those support areas of the industry.
Yeah, and just like we've been talking about it, and making aware that those opportunities, and I think the source and where we go is the schools to educate, so that, because you don't know unless you have a family member or someone in the industry, and that's where you can really capture a lot of the talent and the potential. So what about policy changes in the industry? Policy changes at the industry level are needed to support the advancement. So what type of policy changes? I read that question wrong, but does that make sense? What type of policy changes are needed for this advancement to support women? And Sharon, Mika, we'll start with you.
I'm not an expert in occupational health and safety, but I think a lot of the policy changes that will benefit women have to be in that area, health and safety related. So we've mentioned a couple, both the health insurance part, the equipment part. So I think those are really industry-wide changes and policy changes that can be implemented. Beyond that, a policy is always only as good as companies and people implement it, right? I mean, and so I feel there are 1,000 things we could add to the list now, but if we don't have if we don't raise the willingness to do these things on the ground, on the shop floor, at the dealership, it won't help that much. But occupational health and safety would be my top area to start actual policy changes.
Yeah, that's definitely needed. And what about you, Sharon?
Yeah, I'd second that what Mika just said. But we talked about some policy changes earlier with healthcare and things like that, and I do realize that at the retail level, dealers tend to be, operate like a small business, and maybe that's not something that they can take on in addition to their normal healthcare policies. This isn't a policy. It's just still a challenge and an awareness situation in the retail environment. I bought a car in the last year, and one of the first things that the salesperson said to me was, will your husband be joining us here for this, process? I'm not married. I wasn't wearing a ring. It's just an assumptive process, and I think it has a lot to do with the cost implication of the product that they're selling and the fact that it is a big ticket item. And so most of those types of decisions are made by couples together. But I also bought a home in the last year, and I didn't get the same treatment from the realtor, who was also a man. So I think we have some room to grow there. It's not necessarily a policy, but maybe more of a training and awareness function that I think we could still come a long way on.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that maybe that treatment that you got was someone that had been in the industry for a long time, maybe. And so that's where you have to continuously talk and make it aware that, it's just something you can't do. It's kind of offensive.
That's right.
But it's so common, right? It's so
but
common.
no matter what industry you're in, you can't do that.
Houses. Yeah, it happened to me for sure when we looked at houses, and I had the list, I had the checklist, I had my reading glasses. I was obviously the one in
Making
charge
the
of
decision. Yeah.
the extras for whatever we were doing. I was confronted with a person who hardly talked to me, but always looked at my husband. Cars, same thing. So thank you for mentioning that, because I think that is something most women can relate to, in that on the dealership level, that's definitely the number one thing that
I also have to think, like, those people obviously don't have wives, because everyone knows the wife is the boss. Like, come on, guys. Okay, so going back to just wrapping up the show, and so we just want, how can the audience connect with you guys? If things that you guys are talking about resonates with anyone and they want to reach out, what's the best way to connect? And Mika, we'll start with you.
The best way is LinkedIn, because I check that every day. Mika Gobik, like how you spelled as it is. I know it's complicated, but I'm the only one with that name, so you will easily find me on LinkedIn. And I also have that email address, micha@michagobik.com. If you want to reach out personally, and I'm always happy to chat. So please do feel free to reach out.
And Sharon?
Yeah, same. LinkedIn, there's not a lot of Kitzmans out there, so pretty easy to find. And sharon.kitzman@dominiondms.com.
Thank you, guys. And thank you again to Intellicheck for sponsoring this episode of We Are. And I would also like to thank our fabulous panelists, Mika and Sharon. Thank you guys so much for your valuable time. I am Kaylee Filio, and thank you again for watching. Dave will be back next week, thank God. But no, this was really fun. I'm so glad and honored that he asked me to fill in for him. And next week, and just for the next week, will be Fixed Ops Mastermind, and we'll be back next month. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.